Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Liz Brunner. Liz is an Emmy Award-winning journalist who co-anchored the #1 rated 6 p.m. newscast at ABC TV WCVB News Center 5 in Boston, my hometown. And in 2013, Liz became the CEO and founder of Brunner Communications and launched BrunnerAcademy.com in 2020. A certified professional coach, expert communications coach, and motivational speaker, Liz is also the host of the multi-award-winning podcast, Live Your Best Life with Liz Brunner, available on all the major directories. And I must also say, Liz, welcome to the podcast, but also you're also a published author. Tell us, we'll talk about it later, but tell us the title of your book as well.
Well, first of all, Tammy, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm delighted to connect with you. As we were talking before we were recording, you and I have kind of crossed paths, but never met. So
I know. We're neighbors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the title of my book is Dare to Own You, Taking Your Authenticity and Dreams into Your Next Chapter. And I love the description that Forbes gave it, which is it's a teaching memoir. And I thought that was really extraordinary way of kind of pulling it all together, because it does have a lot of personal stories about obstacles I've overcome and challenges that I've had. It also takes you through many of my career transitions. I consider myself in my 4th chapter right now, which I'm sure we'll get to. And then it also is about my business, but it's also how do you find yourself? How do you learn how to own you? How do you find your voice? How can you live your best life and whatever chapter you want to create next? So I'm very proud of the fact that this is my first book. It was quite the experience, and I'm just delighted that I did it. I can't believe I did it sometimes. It still feels surreal when I'm actually holding it in my hand. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah, I know the feeling, having written my own book. And I look forward to the day when I can get my copy of your book signed personally by you, which I will make sure happens.
We will find a time to make that happen. Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll have a signing party for your book and my book.
I love that. I can't wait. So speaking of which, that's what we're here to do on Work from the Inside Out, is to talk about, you said you're in your 4th chapter. Wow. Take us back to the first chapter, the earlier years, and how those may have informed where you are in your 4th chapter. I know you have an amazing story, and I'd really like my listeners to benefit from it. So take us back to some of those earlier years. Where were the beginnings for you?
Well, if we're talking about my first chapter, my first career chapter, I was a high school music teacher. And I sang semi-professionally in a chorale group that toured Europe. We sang in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, even sang for Pope John Paul II in Vatican Square. Talk about an amazing experience. I literally was about 4 feet away from the Pope at one point in time. And that was very extraordinary. But how I got to that point was music was always a very big part of my life growing up. My father was a minister. My mother was a school social worker and then a medical social worker. And also both of them were very involved in music and performed. And from the time I was knee-high, Tammy, I was singing in the church choir. I was always up in front of the congregation. So performing as a family, even, we were sort of the Von Trapps of performing as a family. And so singing and music were just a really common thread throughout my childhood and growing up. And I never considered doing anything else when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to college and what I was going to study. It was, of course, it's going to be music. To Lawrence University's Conservatory of Music in Appleton, Wisconsin. We considered ourselves the Harvard of the Midwest, which is considering I live across the river from the real Harvard. But from that point on, after I graduated, I was a high school music teacher. And I said sang semi-professionally for a number of years. But after a couple of years, as much as I loved teaching, I felt there was something more that I was supposed to do. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I felt it organically, deep within my soul. There was something else that I was supposed to do next. I left teaching, not knowing what I was going to do, and worked.
Really?
Yes, chapter number 2 was retail, had to pay the bills.
I see. Okay.
Even during high school, I worked in clothing stores. And so I kind of went back to that a little bit because I knew how to do that well, and actually was one of the top sellers in some of the stores I worked in, which was kind of fun. From that experience on, I was kind of exploring, what did I want to do? At one time, I thought maybe I would be an architect. Maybe I would become a psychologist. And I was really reading a ton of books. Of course, the internet was not really around at that point in time.
Yeah, right.
So I was going to the library a lot, and then these self-assessment tests, let me say that again, were coming, to the house, and I was taking them. And I was reading a book called Who's Hiring Who by Richard Brunner. And he talked about informational interviews. I'd never heard of such a thing. But I had done one television commercial when I was Miss Illinois in 1979 in the Miss America Scholarship Pageant. And I share that because it was a scholarship competition. I was Miss Illinois. That paid for my education. I'm very proud of the fact that I paid for every penny of my college education between those scholarships, between the government student loans, and working in the dish room. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do, I was living in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be brave. And I blindly called up both the NBC affiliate and the CBS affiliate in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And I'm going to go on an informational interview. Do I need to go back to college and get another degree? I thought I wanted to do something in public relations and TV. Had no clue what that really meant. But I thought, okay, let's at least ask these questions. I'll fast forward now to the fact that a position, after about 6 months of conversation, was literally created for me. It didn't even exist. And
I love it.
I was the community relations liaison. Doesn't it? I think it's the way I say liaison. It sounds so fun.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another where I learned how to write public service announcements. Then they wanted me to voice some of them. Then they wanted me to be on camera with some of them. And then I had my own little morning talk show. And oh, by the way, we're going to have you do the weather.
It seems like that's a rite of passage for a lot of people.
Yes, it is. But truly, some of the best training you could ever have for live TV, because there's no script. And the thing was, Tammy, I constantly said, just because I've never done something doesn't mean I can't. I just have to try. Now, every time they asked me to do something, I'd say yes, and I'd go home and freak out, especially. But you know what? We know more than we think we know, and we are capable of learning more sometimes than we think we know if we're willing to stretch ourselves out of our comfort zone so that we can learn and grow. I was there for 3 years. Then I got the call to Tampa, which was the 13th market. So I went from the 75th market to the 13th market, another CBS affiliate. And I came in as the director of community relations, and it was an upper management position. I was the only female in upper management. Talk about pushing through the glass ceiling. I had to learn a lot. And then within a very short period of time, they tapped me to also be the morning anchor. I was getting up at 2 a.m. I was work at 3 a.m. We were on the air at 5 a.m. And I was on the air till 7. Then we had meetings and things like that till 9:30. Then I would go upstairs, put my manager's hat on.
Wow.
So I worked about 80 hours a week for a number of years. And I finally was like, I can't do all of this anymore. So now, fast forward again, I got the call from my agent saying, there's this station in Boston, WCBB. They want to talk to you about being a journalist on the show Chronicle, which was an award-winning news magazine show. I know you're familiar with it, having lived in Boston for so many years. I'm so excited about it. I just felt like it was absolutely the right place for me to be. And I got the job. And one thing led to another. Within a very short period of time, they also wanted me to be the eye-opener news anchor. Again, early mornings. I have a sign on my back, Tammy, that says, please give me 2 jobs to do at the same time. Okay.
Yeah. And make me get up in the middle of the night.
Exactly. And I did that for a number of years and finally just completely went to the news department and had, I don't want to say a normal schedule because there's really no normal schedule in TV. I was at Channel 5 for 20 years, and all told, 28 years in the business, and had some amazing, unbelievable opportunities and covered unbelievable stories. 9/11, the Boston Marathon bombing. And for those who are in the New England area, Senator Edward Kennedy's passing. I mean, that was days long. I mean, just really profound stories that had a huge impact. And I also felt very fortunate to cover many exclusive stories. I got an interview with President Barack Obama, and I was the only Boston reporter to do so. Now, it took me 4 years to get that interview, mind you. Okay. I kept writing to the White House. Nobody responded. And when they finally did, I was like, I'm jumping on this.
Yeah.
There were medical firsts, a face transplant, a double hand transplant.
I remember those. Yeah.
Ordinary stories. So I feel very blessed. But then again, a couple years before I actually left in 2013, I started feeling this urge again, like what's next? The industry was changing so dramatically. And I thought, I'm still young enough, or at least I thought I was at the time, that I could maybe do something else. And Tammy, I had never, ever wanted to own my own business. It was not on my radar screen.
Really?
No, it was never something I thought I wanted to do. But as I was talking to people quietly and confidentially for a couple of years before I actually did leave, I said, what does somebody like me do when you think you're ready to do something else? Again, I went back to those informational interviews. So important. One thing led to another, and I kind of had narrowed this scope of, okay, I could be maybe some communications expert for a corporation. I had no idea who or where or when, but that was one lane. Another lane might be getting more involved in nonprofit organizations as an executive director. I was very involved in many charities. But again, I'd never done that before. And then again, maybe I could launch my business and teach people about presence and public speaking and presentation skills and storytelling and leadership. And oh yes, I could do some media training as well. And when I shared this 3-lane approach with one of my mentors who had one of these informational interviews over a period of time, he said, Liz, you're well known, you're well respected, you have credibility. That is value. Why would you give that value to somebody else? Launch your business. If in 6 months or 9 months you don't have any clients, you don't like what you're doing, you can always go do something else. Tammy, a kaleidoscope went click.
Yeah.
In that moment, I knew exactly that's what I would do. 6 weeks later, I left and launched my business, and I haven't looked back. And now next month, October 2022, it's going to be 9 years old. Oh my gosh. And if you had said to me 10 years ago, Liz, you're going to have a successful business, you're going to have a podcast, you're going to have BrunnerAcademy.com, your online learning platform. Oh, yes, by the way, you're going to have a book. I would have said, what?
That's amazing. But I know you're talking about that. I like the way you said that kaleidoscope. Like there's that moment where it clicks. And that's what I call about inside out. That's exactly why I'm doing this podcast, is when you allow yourself to stay open and curious. I mean, the entire through thread of everything you've just described, and we know that every step of the way was not just like, and I did this and I did this and I did that. And it was just, it was smooth sailing like butter, right?
No, let me just say no.
And I know enough about the business of TV to know there's nothing simple about it beyond even the 80-hour weeks and getting up in the middle of the night. It can be brutal. When you're putting yourself in the public eye like that, there's nothing simple about it.
No, there really isn't. And, look, I loved the industry when I was in it. I'm glad I'm not a part of it right now. People often ask, do you miss anything? I said, I don't miss anything about the news because it's just so different from when I entered the business.
So different now.
Do I miss some of the people I work with? Sure.
Yeah.
Do I miss television in general? Yes. Would I ever go back to TV? Maybe, but not news. There's a very different thing. And, who knows? I mean, I may have another 5th chapter for all I know, but I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. And it's about that transformation. And I know you know about that in the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the privilege, if you will, of not only helping somebody transform and move the dial. I see it before the clients do, but when they see it, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's like the best feeling in the world.
Oh, it makes you feel like, oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes, yes. And I just had one of those moments the other day where one of the clients I was working with, truly, she was like, wow. I said, what do you think? She goes, I feel so good. I feel so confident. And I am better. I'm like, yes, you are.
Mm-hmm.
Great. It's
yeah.
great.
So I'm gonna unpack all of this a little bit more. Because I'm just a wildly curious person about how people move from one thing to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you, of course, being a great speaker and storyteller, you did a beautiful job presenting your career. But I am curious. So you grew up in Illinois. That part I think I'm getting, right?
Well, there are two parts of that. So I was born in Connecticut, but when I was less than a year old, we moved to the islands of Hawaii. So until I was 10 years old, we lived in the islands. And my mother, who's from India, that's where she got her citizenship, was in Hawaii. All three of my brothers were born in the islands. And it's funny because people will say to me sometimes, what was it like growing up in Hawaii? I didn't know any differently. Okay. I guess it was pretty awesome. I went to school barefoot basically till I was in 4th grade, if you can believe that or not.
Wow.
But I mean, what I loved about that is, now because I'm older and I can look back on it, there were many cultures and nationalities. And I loved that. It was a melting pot. I'm a melting pot. And so it felt very much included because everybody looked different. Everybody was, they were Hawaiian, they were Chinese, they were Japanese, they were Filipino, they were African American, they were Korean, you name it.
Yeah.
They were there.
Yeah.
And then when at the age of 10 and moved to Lily White Pekin, Illinois, that was a culture shock.
I bet that. Yeah. And now, where in Illinois did you end up moving to?
It's called Pekin, Illinois.
Oh, Pekin is really, I thought that was just a nickname.
No, Pekin, 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 Illinois.
Okay.
It's the middle of the state. And there was a legend, if you will, that used to say, if you drilled through the center of the earth from Pekin, Illinois, you'd come out in Peking, China. Now, yeah, who knows what that's true or not.
I just remember as a kid, we'd say, oh, if you keep digging, you'll find your way to China. But now I know from where, from Pekin, Illinois. Okay.
Exactly.
Got it. So, and I love the description of the singing and the music in your home, and both your parents were very service oriented. And there's so many ways in which your work all these years has been, both, in front of the camera, behind the scenes, but always getting this feeling of you're providing a service with everything that you're doing. I was curious about when you made the move to Tampa. You were director of community relations.
Correct.
And then they moved you into the morning anchor role.
Oh, and I kept the other job too for a while.
No, I know you were working your tail off. I mean, 80 hours a week. But I was curious, what was it that made them decide to put you in front of the camera? I mean, were you already doing a lot of sort of speaking? I mean, I guess as community relations, you were already probably representing the station and doing things like that.
Yes, but keep in mind, I had been on camera when I was in my first station in in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
I had my own little talk show.
Oh, that's right.
So I had already on camera experience.
I see. Okay.
Yes, but I didn't have any news experience. And what the challenge became, Tammy, when I was the director of community relations and the morning anchor. As the director of community relations, being in a management position, I would know a lot of things that were privy to management about my competition, about the direction the station was going. So in some respects, I felt ostracized because people didn't trust me. They knew that I knew information that they didn't know, and they were never going to know. And so it was a very challenging dual role of balancing both of those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so that must have been huge learning for you.
Oh
Huge.
my goodness, yes. And you know, in some respects, because I have the opportunity now to work with clients on leadership, on purpose, on service. I mean, all of these things combined. I mean, that's where some of those experiences and knowledge that I have come from.
Yeah.
And as I write in the book, so the impetus for the book was a quote by my grandmother: "No knowledge is ever wasted.
Yeah.
Experience is ever wasted." And I love to encourage people to step back from themselves, put themselves in the witness position, and look at all of their life experiences, career chapters. I mean, newspaper routes. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yes.
What are the pieces? What are the dots that you can connect? What are the patterns and themes that begin to emerge? What are the rivers that run through your life that you can bring together, that in some cases can help you figure out what is my next chapter, or what's my purpose.
Right. And regardless of how those things turned out, right?
Right.
So for example, you were in Tampa, you were getting amazing experience. Some of it was painful, it sounds like, and challenging, challenging, painful, expansive, all at the same time, right?
Isn't that life, Tammy?
It is, but some people take that in stride and other people, it drains them. Everybody has a different way of handling those things, right?
Right. I'm not going to say it didn't drain me. Trust me. I mean,
right.
I have those obstacles, and I talk about a number of them in the book, as a matter of fact. I've had my challenges. I've had those obstacles, but I've also learned, I hope, to rise above them when they happen. I hope that I've learned coping skills along the way to say, it's not always going to be like this.
Right. Right.
What can I do? What's in my control? What is not in my control?
Oh, absolutely. That is the moment I ever hit a stuck spot, or I have a client who hits a stuck spot. I think that's the first place I always go is, let's look at what we have control over and what we don't have control over. Because when you start to look in those places, it alleviates a whole layer and level of, what we call stuck, right?
Yes.
I love that. How long were you in Tampa, by the way?
I was in Tampa for 5 years. So 3 years in my first station, 5 years in Tampa, and then 20 years at Channel 5 in Boston.
Right in my backyard.
Yeah.
So over the years in Boston, you were in a lot of different positions there. Is that true?
Yes. Well, I came for Chronicle. And then they wanted me to be a part of the news department and be the eye-opener news anchor. And I also did a lot of health stories. And then at one time I had the night shift, and I was on the 5:30 and the 11 o'clock news. And then, I was filling in for everyone on other newscasts, whether it was noon, 5:36, whatever. And then finally, when Natalie Jacobson retired, and she was an icon in this market, I know you know that name.
Oh, sure.
And to have that opportunity to be chosen to follow in her footsteps and take that reign over of being the 6 o'clock anchor, I was very proud of that.
Yeah. And I'm curious, in that realm, you had all those different roles. Was there an opportunity for you to influence some of those moves, or were you pretty much going wherever you were asked to go?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
First of all, opportunities were afforded to me by putting me on those different shows, number one. But the piece that I had control over, if you will, is I'm the writer, director, and producer of my own life. And so what stories did I bring forth? For example, going after President Barack Obama, or doing some of those other medical firsts. I mean, I had some assistance with those medical firsts in terms of getting those stories, but having the opportunity to really dig into some things. And I was very proud of the fact that I had a lot of exclusive stories. Now, I had to work really hard to get those. They're the harder ones to get.
Yeah.
But, being able to get those stories, I think carved a path also for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And so when you started to get that urge saying, what's next? How long was it between the time the urge started and the time you actually did,
Years.
make that? It was years. Yeah. So that's an interesting transition period too. When you have such a well-established and highly successful career. And of course you were, you had a very visibly successful career. You don't just walk away from that saying, I have an urge, right?
I have an urge. I'm going to leave.
I have an urge. All right, I'm done.
It really was a process of, as I said, doing informational interviews again. What does somebody like me do?
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting, Tammy, when I would have those conversations with community leaders, and some of them would say, well, I see you read the news every night. Trust me, it's not just reading the news every night.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. But then I also had to learn that, wait a minute, they speak in corporate business world. They speak a different language than what we speak in TV. And so I had to learn how to express my skill set in language they understood. For example, breaking news in television is similar to crisis management in the business corporate world. In the business corporate world, being a quote unquote project manager is very similar to being a reporter or a producer.
Right.
And the skills are very, very similar. So once I was able to express what I did in those kinds of terms, and so I got a lot of different interesting ideas of what I thought I should do. And I would go on LinkedIn and I'd type in public relations or community or presentation skills. And I would just see what jobs would be available just because I was curious.
Sure.
And what was fun for me, nothing came of it. But what was fun was saying, okay, I can do that, like that. No, do not want to do that.
Yeah.
When those job descriptions would have, here's what you're expected to do. I'm like, yes, I can do that. Like doing that. No, do not want to do that.
Right.
So it helped narrow the focus a little bit to where I came down to those 3 lanes.
Yeah.
And once I made that decision, I had kind of been playing around with building a website about that time. And I had told the people that I was working with, I said, you've got 6 months, a year. I'm not going to do anything. And I literally that afternoon, after talking with my mentor, and I made that decision, that kaleidoscope moment, I called up the owner of the company and I said, remember when I said I had 6 months? I said, you now have 6 weeks. I'm going for it. Because if I don't do it now, I will not do it.
Yeah.
And, the thing about that, Tammy, is, and I want to really express this to our listeners today, I was petrified. Okay. I was petrified to leave.
I bet.
But what kept coming back to me were a couple things. One was a quote by Robert Schuller, which is, what would you attempt to do if you knew you would not fail?
Yeah.
What would any of us do if we knew we would not fail? And first of all, failure is really not failure. Failure is just a lesson.
I agree. Yeah.
It's just a lesson. Right. But I also told myself, if fear was the only thing standing in my way from leaving, that was not a good enough reason.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And, another piece of that equation that you've mentioned a few times already that I think is something that a lot of people don't always avail themselves of. You mentioned this mentor. You had a I bet you had more than one mentor.
I had many mentors. I'm just speaking most about the not the last one, but one of them who had that profound kaleidoscope.
Right. But I think those are things that some people don't avail themselves of. And I think that's a critical piece as well, is having some trusted people in your circle who you can bounce ideas off of, who are going to look after your best interests, but also look through a different lens and help you look through different lenses and help you in a safe way, in a comfortable way, look at things so that you have a little, it gives you almost a little bit of taking a couple steps back and looking at things while still being who you are.
And it requires a couple of things. First of all, it requires being authentic and being vulnerable. And I remember one of the mentors that I spoke with during that 2-year period, and I bravely said to him, I said, I've never wanted to own a business. I'm scared to own a business. I don't think I'm smart enough to own a business. Talk about limiting beliefs.
Whoa.
And he said to me, Liz, you are smart and you will figure it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that just flipped another switch for me.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I will figure it out because I almost always do. And, do I have the right answers right away? No. Is it trial and error sometimes? Yes. Do I have to step out of my comfort zone? Yes. We have to allow ourselves to be that authentic and that vulnerable in order to gather the information that we need to be honest with ourselves.
Right, right. And I would imagine also being a journalist had to be a wonderful tool.
Curious, yes.
Right, you're naturally curious. I mean that seems to be another through thread. You're naturally curious, but you were well equipped with asking lots of great questions along the way and getting the answers you needed. And I think that's the other thing I see a lot of people when they start to get stuck, they think they're supposed to know the answers. And your example is ideal for that. You stepped into a lot of unknown territory, but you also were equipped with a lot of great questions and were able to find your way, had mentors, had all kinds of ways to get the answers you needed, but also you had to take some blind leaps too.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about, that piece of connecting with people and people who became mentors. And one of my very, very dear mentors, who's still a mentor to me, I remember when I first was sharing with him, wow, I think I need to think about this. And he was the one who reminded me of the informational interviews. And I said, yes, I remember doing those. But he also said, okay, make a list of at least 5 people, if not 10 people, if you can, but at least 5. Mm-hmm. Who would you like to connect with and know well enough that you can connect with them? That's the first step. But then when you're meeting with them and you already have that established relationship, the next layer is asking them who else you should be talking to. And more importantly, will they connect you? And that's a piece that people forget about. What should I talk to and will you connect me? Because I would never have gotten into some of these people had I not been connected, had I not asked that question. But that comes down to the trust of the relationship that you have first, right, before you make that ask.
Right. And I often will say to people, to add what you're saying, and if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. So you have to take the risk to ask. Will you connect me?
Well, and I love the ask question because so Jack Canfield, co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, did the foreword for my book. And he was a podcast guest and we had such a wonderful time. And someone who's on his team who runs his company said, you should ask Jack to do the foreword. I said, what? And I was like, okay. And now principle number 17 in Jack Canfield's 100 Principles book is ask. So I bravely emailed him and I said, would you consider? And his response was he would consider it if he had the opportunity to read the book ahead of time, because after all, it was his reputation. He was not going to put his name on anything that he did not support. Mm-hmm. I'm like, of course, I want you to read the book.
Yeah.
And when he wrote me back, and believe it or not, this Friday, September 16th, is the day that I got his email back saying, congratulations on writing a great book. Here's your foreword. Wow. Had I not asked,
I know. I mean, I think that's a great reflection, and everyone listening should think about that one time you asked and you're so glad you did.
Yes.
Do it again and again. And think about, when other people ask you for something, how happy you are to help them out. I think that's the other thing is people think that they're more readily available to others than others will be available to them. And so it's really important to remind yourself that this is all a two-way street, right?
It is. And now, granted, it's important to figure out when and who you ask. ask.
Yes.
It's not like I'm just going to ask everybody and anybody, oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? No, that's not it.
No.
It comes down to that trust, that relationship that you have developed with someone in some capacity.
Yes.
That it makes sense. But you have to, I say you have to be very careful about when you make that ask, but be brave enough to make the ask.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's an excellent point. So let's talk about where things are at today. You own your business 9 years.
Oh.
Wow. You've got an academy, the BrunnerAcademy.com. You've got your book, you've got your podcast. You are working with individual clients, coaching.
And workshops and public speaking. And yes.
So I hope, though, you're not doing 80 hours a week.
No, I'm not. I am working a lot. Probably 7 days, but not necessarily eight hours all day, every day, 7 days a week. There's always something to do, whether I'm reading a book for my next podcast guest, which I do. And I one of the things I was known for as a journalist is that I always did my homework and I can't get out of it. I will read the books of my guests on my show because I want to know as much as I can. But also, I feel that there is yet another chapter, and I've always enjoyed being a keynote speaker, motivational speaker, and I really feel called to do more of that. I really feel like, not that I'm going to stop doing all these other things that I'm doing, but I really feel like that is the next layer, if you will, of continuing to be able to be of service in the world in some way. And I just feel so strongly that this book to me was divine intervention of how it all came together.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a reason that it happened. There's a reason that it's out in the world.
Yes.
And now I need to continue to share that message with people.
Yes.
No knowledge is ever wasted. And if I can make these kinds of transitions in my life, guess what? Anybody can. No, maybe you're not going to be a speaker or an author or have your own business, but what is it that you want to do next?
Right.
We're all living longer, hopefully healthier.
Right. But we're
not retiring, if you will, in the ways that we used to. So how else can I be of service? How else can I share my gifts and talents with the world in some way? And that's what I want really people to be thinking about is there's always a next chapter if you're willing.
Yes. I love it. There's always a next chapter. I totally agree with you on that.
Yes.
So Liz, what's the best way for people to connect with you or learn more about all the things that you offer?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question, Tammy. Probably the easiest place to go to first would be my website, which is lizbrunner.com. That's LIZBRUNNER.com. And I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes.
I will have everything in the
show notes. But along with that, you'll be able to find access to my book. You'll also be able to find access to BrunnerAcademy.com, or you can go directly to BrunnerAcademy.com. And what you'll find there, the courses that I have there, a lot of them are on public speaking. There's some small, short courses, but then there's my flagship course, which is called How to Be a Rockstar Public Speaker. And it's not just for people who need to make pitches or presentations or have a speech. Maybe you have to do a wedding toast. Maybe you're on a panel. Maybe you're a moderator. It's just a great way for people to learn really great public speaking skills. And you can take the course by itself, or you can do the VIP version, which allows you access after completing the course to some one-on-one virtual coaching sessions with one of the coaches on my team. So I really encourage people to check that out. And also, I have 4 new courses that we added, which we call the DARE collection.
Oh, and I love it.
They align with the book. They're not based on the book, but they align with the book. And one of them is Dare to Go for Your Goals. And even if you think you know all about goal setting, I guarantee you're going to learn some things new in this course. And it's a very short, easy, simple course. Another one is Dare to Find Peace of Mind, which is all about mindfulness. And then there's another one that is called Dare to Shift from Procrastination to Motivation. And then Dare to Rise Above Tough Times, which is all about resilience. And boy, have we had to learn about resilience over the past few years with the COVID.
Yes.
And I want to share with our listeners, we do have a discount, 15% off any course right now. If anybody wants it, the promo code is BESTYOU, BESTYOU.
Okay, so we'll put that in the show notes.
If anyone wants to take advantage of that.
I love that. Thank you. That's so generous. And that's brilliant. That is brilliant. And I'm so glad that you brought all that up, because I was going through your website and I think I recall seeing some of that, but I'm glad you brought it up, because this is the expansiveness of what you offer people. And I think it's not just about how to speak. It's also about mindset, right? It's about how you show up.
How you show up in the world. And one of the reasons I love doing my podcast, which is Live Your Best Life with Liz Brunner, because it is all about transformations, people who have transitioned, who have risen above tough times. And I love those stories, because when people listen to that show, my goal and hope is, first of all, my vision for my life is to teach, motivate, and inspire people to live their best life, whatever that means for them.
Right.
But if you hear other people's stories that they say, you know what? Maybe I can do that too. Maybe I can make that change. Maybe I can rise above my tough times. And, one of my most recent guests, oh my gosh, Chris Waddell, who's a paraplegic, and he climbed Mount Everest in a wheelchair. Okay. The day I interviewed him, I'm like, I don't feel so bad about my life right now.
Yeah.
It's in perspective when you have those kinds of powerful stories.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Liz, I share the sentiment as a fellow, story collector and storyteller, I think it's the best way to inspire people is to share real stories of real people. And it's not about everybody trying to be like you, like those other people, but it's enough fuel to say, this is what's possible. Now, think about what's possible for you.
And that's what my book's about, really, because at the end of every chapter, I have a section called Time to Reflect. And if people just will take the time to reflect, and I ask some very poignant questions, and if you're honest with yourself, I dare say you're going to learn something new about yourself. You will learn something new.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all you need is just even a little bit of something to tip you over the edge, right? That kaleidoscope you were talking about, you twist it one little turn and all of a sudden you get that, aha, and you realize, I know where to go next. I might not know what it's going to look like down the road, but I know where to go next. And that's all you need to do, right?
And I want to share that I'm a firm believer in asking the universe. Okay? Asking the universe. And I'll share another story, if I may, which is getting close to finishing the book. It was a Sunday morning, and I love to walk the Charles River. And normally I'm over there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And that morning I was just writing away. And another friend of mine who I'd met on the river, we'd said, we're going to see each other. And she was there early always. So that particular morning, it was now 10:30, and I was like, I'm stuck. I know I need to go somewhere next in the book. I don't know exactly what it is. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's already 10:30. She's not going to be there, but I'm going to go anyway. So I cross over the footbridge, and who's the first person I see? My friend. And she said, you're late. And I said, you're still here. And she said, why are you late? And I said, well, I've been writing my book. And she said, tell me about it. So I started telling her about it. And then she starts talking about, when I'm working with my clients, yada, 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 yada. I said, I gotta go. I gotta go. It literally, that conversation pointed me in the right direction. Because on my way walking over, I'm thinking, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to go? She gave me that pivot point. And I finished the book later that day.
Whoa. I love it. I love it. I love it. That creative process, but reflecting things off of other people. Sometimes it's not even what they said. it's just that engagement, that interaction, and reflecting also on the whole notion of informational interviews. They're not just for new college graduates.
Oh, gosh,
they're
no.
for everybody, right?
Right. And that's, it's interesting you should say that, because sometimes when I'm working with people on their elevator pitch, for example, and they say, well, why would I need one? I already have a job. I'm like, no. This is not about you going after a job, although sometimes it is, but it really is about you knowing who you are, sharing who you are, as opposed to, I'm Liz Brunner, CEO and founder of Brunner Communications. That tells people nothing.
Right.
And so being able to help people figure out, how do you share who you are,
right,
what you're all about and what you do, without using your title, by the way, and in 20 or 30 seconds, it's not just college graduates. We all need to understand who we are, where we're going. And even if we don't know, begin to ask, step back, connect the dots, begin.
Right. Liz, you've captured it all. I want to wrap this up with one final question, and I know that you would have many answers to it, but I'm going to ask you to try to give me one answer.
Okay.
And that is, if you were to give somebody one piece of advice about when they're considering what their what's next is, they're making that transition, whatever it looks like for them, what would be one key piece of advice that you would give somebody?
My grandmother Chaco's quote, "No knowledge is ever wasted. You know more than you think you know."
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Grandma. I love that.
Thank you, Grandma.
Oh, Liz, thank you so much for being here. This has been delightful and informative. I know there's going to be a ton of people who are going to get tremendous value out of this conversation.
I hope so. And that, I love what you're doing with your work and having this show, because similar concept of, we want to help people.
Absolutely.
To think outside the box.
Yes.
And really kind of begin to own more of who they are, and give themselves permission to own more of who they are, and take themselves to those next chapters, whatever that may be for them.
Absolutely.
I've so enjoyed us connecting today. I knew that we would have fun, because we have a lot of similar philosophies and concepts, but to be able to share this together is really special.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Liz Brunner. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her extraordinary career journey and interests. What's your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 199. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Liz, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate reading your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website, tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain the podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL is the place to find it. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd really like to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.